Antibiotics, part 2. Which to use and when to use them. Erythromycin, typically used for children, used to be. Larynx, tonsillitis, sinusitis. Carbuncles, which are big localized spots that are infected. They can be huge. Affected skin follicles, basically. Good for that. And again, surgery burns, rheumatic fever, and dental or injury. So again, you might want to put them on it prophylactically if you have to go in and cut and tidy up wounds and grit down. It's also, this is useful for people, it's good for gonorrhea and syphilis. Don't sleep around, and if you do, use precautions, use Hoople's cap condoms, but if you don't, bear that in mind. Diphtheria, which is a hugely killing disease before the advent of modern nursing, and then antibiotics, and then vaccination. But basic quarantine in modern nursing is the way to treat these infections. Scarlet fever. Erythromycin. Erythromycin, of course, all the mycins are very related to each other, right? All the acins are very related to each other. So bronchitis, again airway, again pneumonia, again sinusitis, again pharyngitis, ENT, ears, nose and throat. Ears, nose and throat. And again for chlamydia, such type of sexual disease, erythromycin. So if you find somebody grit down, comes to you and says, oh, I'm really scratchy down below, and you have a look and you think, I think they've got the clap, you might want to put on erythromycin. But if you look at them and you think it's a kind of a type of a discharge from a female who's not probably unsexually active, you might want to treat with erythromycin because it could well be fulminant chlamydia. Ciprofloxacin, again lungs, again ears and nose and throat, but specifically if it's a reoccurring ears and nose and throat, you want to switch to ciprofloxacin. Cholera. Cholera is a reasonable concern that people should have as a specific issue in grit down. And it's reasonable, I think, for everybody in North America, including far north of Canada, to assume that all water sources may be contaminated with cholera bacteria in a prolonged grit down. It doesn't take many people with cholera to spread cholera into all of the water supply. Haiti is a typical example of that. The people went there to give them aid from the United Nations, did a lot of damage to them, and they also gave them cholera, killed tens of thousands. What I recommend to treat cholera is doxycycline. But I do recommend that you look at the sites that I put up on here and go and check them out yourself. Pneumonia. A lot of the antibiotics work for respiratory infections. Treat for a week with one, then add another one if you need to. Do the full course of the first one and then do the full course of the second. Give basic nursing care and hydration. So all pneumonia that you get is community acquired pneumonia, and so the treatments for community acquired pneumonia is what you want to look up. There is ventilator acquired pneumonia, and there is also hospital acquired pneumonia. Don't bother looking at them, have no place in grit down. They're treated very differently. So when you're looking up pneumonia or you're looking up treatments because you've got a family member who's sick in hospital, bear in mind that hospital pneumonia, acquired pneumonia, and ventilatory acquired pneumonia from a ventilator to breathe for you, not totally different, but very different from regular treatment of pneumonia. Botulism, don't get it. Don't eat expired food. Microwave all of your food for an awfully long time and stir it very, very well. All food, including vegetables. Well, that's not practical. So watch the video on botulism and follow it. Follow the advice as far as you can. Botulism from food poisoning cannot be treated with antibiotics, nor even worse, should it be treated. If you have a case of botulism and you give antibiotics, what typically happens is that you kill the bacteria, the botulism bacteria. By killing them, all of the neurotoxin which causes the signs and symptoms of botulism is suddenly released, so you'll lose the patient. Kill the disease, kill the patient. So do not give antibiotics in botulism. There's a very specific type of botulism which you will not understand what it is. That is a wound infection with botulism bacteria in it, which you can get from water and also from the environment. So you can give antibiotics for that, but frankly, you won't know it's botulism anyway. But if you've got signs and symptoms of just systemic botulism, do not ever give antibiotics, ever, if they have those signs and symptoms. You'll kill them. There's a bunch of stuff I did on Lyme disease and ticks in general as well on this, you can look at yourself in your own leisure. And I have good news. Usually I don't have good news, but I have good news for you guys. Antibiotic resistance. The antibiotic resistance is now active, and there's lots of really bizarre, to me, I'm an RM, really bizarre stuff out there online and in hospitals about how antibiotics are about to end and we're all going to die. The truth is, antibiotics are not about to end, and we're not all going to die if they do end. Now, why am I saying that? The reason I'm saying that is studies have been done in Europe where they have good socialist universal health care, which every civilized country should have. And unless you're incredibly wealthy. If you're incredibly wealthy, you don't want universal health care. If you're incredibly wealthy and you don't want universal health care, you're a bit daft. Seriously. But here we go. After about 6 months, 3 to 6 months of no use of a specific type of antibiotic in a geographically large area, the antibiotic resistance falls. So in about a year after grid down, penicillin, good old penicillin, which is effectively useless because it's used in animals and everywhere else for most people these days, oral penicillin is pretty much useless, actually will be very effective again. So it's actually worth buying cheaper versions of different types of antibiotics and doing it that way. Now the other thing I'm going to mention is broad spectrum. If you see it labeled broad spectrum, it will probably say broad spectrum gram negative or broad spectrum gram positive. Actually, you want to get those. That means they're going to treat a range, multiple types of antibiotic, of bacteria, so that's kind of what you want to get. The more specific types of antibiotic will actually not be that useful unless you can diagnose and treat very specific infections. Anyway, I hope you liked that. Like I say, if you want a copy of this, feel free to email me at the usual place, and when I get around to it, I'll boot you off a copy so you can download it yourself. Au revoir, have a great day, and have fun.